I get the feeling someone is watching us.
Hey guys, welcome back. Bushcraft Family back again with another video. I want to start this off noting that I am not a depressed person. No plans of doing harm to myself or anything in that nature. I came across some documents and a group of individuals that bring out the truth and whatnot. You can call them whistleblowers or whatever you want to call them. Well, sorry to start this way, but I thought this was a good idea. Yes, there is secret military plans for handling, civil unrest, different things like civil wars, so to speak, and uprisings against government officials and things like that. This has been in place for quite a while. There are, or has been, certain test runs of this in years past. And they all have special code names and stuff. And I came across some of these and what some of these actually entail. So I thought it would be important to pass this along. It's always good to pass this information around, so to speak. And here on YouTube. Hopefully on YouTube. Most folks assume that the military, our United States military, operates only overseas and those types of situations. But in fact, there is detailed plans that exist for responding to scenarios, certain crises and unrest. Yes, even the government knows about civil unrest within the country. But the truth is, these plans are far from, theories or, in papers or, plans of some sort in a dark, dark place. They are actively maintained and updated regularly, and they are practiced, ready to be put in action at a moment's notice. And we're not talking about FEMA or anything like that, which could be considered part of this, but anyways, one of these test things, if you would, is called, or was called, Jade Helm. It was called, Project Jade Helm 15. In 2015, a large-scale exercise called Jade Helm 15 took place across multiple southwestern states. The official line, it was just a training op, but people noticed a few odd and very strange things that were happening. Civilian areas were labeled as hostile or friendly. Surveillance and movement tracking occurred in these towns across Texas, Arizona, and Utah. Reports of unmarked vehicles, helicopters, and covert operations emerged. To many, it felt like a dry run for how the military might operate in American neighborhoods, tracking, unhappy people, navigating resistance, and blending into civilian environments. If you ever wondered whether urban environments were being studied for strategic response Jade Helm gave us our answers. There is reports, what Jade Helm was and how well it did, so to speak, and the faults in it and the good parts of it and stuff like that. Another one, or a couple other ones, long before Jade Helm, there were Operation Garden Plot and Cable Splicer. Yeah, these are some interesting names that included plans developing during the Cold War era, when the government feared large-scale protests and uprisings. Operation Garden Plot focused on coordinating military and federal law enforcement responses. It had roots in the 1960s when riots and anti-war protests rocked the nation. Another one was Operation Cable Splitter, was a government wing designed to make sure the chain of command could survive unrest, nuclear war, or major catastrophes. Think energy broadcast takeovers, government bunkers, and large-scale deployment. Even if these programs have never been retired, make sure you remember that. Even if these programs have been retired in their name, meaning the operation's name, not the plan, so to speak, but the names of these operations have been retired. Their DNA, so to speak, the birth of these are still in today's protocols. Now, I came across something very interesting. I'm debating to say the names and stuff, but we'll call it the shadow plan, and I'll give you the number of it. I'll just lay it out. It's called Con Plan 3502. Officially called the U.S. Army Civil Disturbance Operation Plan. Cons Plan 3502 is a roadmap for the government that deals with large-scale unrest, and this is not one of these, conspiracy theories. This is not made-up YouTubers' idea of what is going on in the government or whatever you want to think. This plan has been acknowledged through declassified fragments, whistleblowers, and military insiders. So it has been proven this is what it is. It's not a conspiracy theory or, anything like this. There are groups out there that gather this information so it can be out there to the public, knowing that the government does have plans if its people are not happy with what the government is doing. What it means either way, left or right or middle or side or whatever. What does it include? Well, deployment of active duty troops alongside the National Guard. This means Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, not against foreign, but against its own people. Using non-lethal force like rubber bullets, we'll just call it sound machines or sound cannons. It's a way to control mass crowds and things like this. It can make people fall to the ground and do horrible things to them. These sound cannons can, make you sleepy or make you not combative. There's also tear gas. There's setting up temporary detention sites for mass arrest. They already have these areas in place in every state that in the country. I'm not going to go into much more detail into those. A lot of people have seen a lot of those during the 2020 issues. And yeah, securing vital infrastructure such as electric grids, water plants, and cell towers, meaning they will control those. Imposing martial law if states or state governments collapse. It's already in the books. There's documents that have this, that have been declassified that you can check out that give the government power to do so without, the states stepping in and doing anything. Okay, what's this mean for you? It means that in serious breakdowns in order or normal protections vanish, checkpoints, curfews, detention areas, could happen very fast. They already have this stuff set in motion to go boom. And law enforcement and your local law enforcement alone won't be able to protect civilians. They're part of the civilians. They're, so to speak. So you must have a plan in hand and know how to move or shelter safely without relying on, the government. And so many nowadays, if something happens, they expect the government to save them. Let's remember back in 2005, and I still have a lot of people that I'm in contact, preppers, we'll call them preppers, in Louisiana area, that talk about, Katrina. New Orleans in 2005, we seen full hand of what the federal government and the military can take over civilian areas. Even though martial law was never declared, the military operations still had authority over everything. Armed troops patrolled neighborhoods. House-to-house searches were conducted. Civilians were disarmed in certain areas. I'm not saying everywhere. Even those trying to defend their properties, they were asked to give up, their protection, so to speak. The chaos also exposed failures in communication and logistics. Local, state, and federal agents were often at odds because local things were not the priority. the main priority were these agencies. I'm not going to come up and put out the names of these agencies and stuff. You can do your own research on this. It's not too hard to find. I don't feel comfortable, talking too much, even though I've put out a lot right here. But it also showed the speed and power of the military response when a situation got out of hand. They were full force. You may not have seen them. They may have been disguised as FEMA or local help or whatever the case may be. I'm not saying allegedly any of this was going on, but a lot of data that I have come across here lately shows they were there. Now, I've talked about this before, martial law and whatnot, but what happens under martial law? Martial law is a term often mentioned in passing, A lot of YouTubers talk about it, this and that, and it's a far, far thing that's going to happen in the future. We may never see it, that kind of thing. When it's properly declared, civilian authority is suspended. Local popo, sheriff department mean nothing. They're nobodies. And the military commands assume full control over its enforcement, meaning they can do enforce curfews at armed curfewed enforcement, if you kind of get where I'm going. Strict travel restrictions, mandatory ID checkpoints, suspensions of I can't say that, but have allowing them to detain you without any legal actions or protection or anything like that. Replacement of civil courts with military courts or tribunals. And they can, there is no warrants to be, to knock on your door and here's a warrant for, your legal rights and all that. They just bust in and seize what they want, search what they want. It's the military. These, some of these that I've talked about is not hypothetical or anything like that. These are outright proven. During World War II, Hawaii found this out, It didn't make no difference who lived in the house or what. If they wanted to come out and, check things out. Now, the modern framework of that is the Conplay 3502 that I mentioned earlier, and try to get past that real quick. Yeah. Trying to weave my way around this. So maybe we'll go back to this. Okay. Let's move forward. Well, some situations, we know that FEMA takes the lead in managing logistics, population movements, and control, while the Department of Defense provides personnel personnel for, you know, if right suppression and protecting critical infrastructures. Overall, COG is designed to ensure the government maintains control even in scenarios where a large portion of the population is impacted. So to speak. Surveillance networks, I guess you would call it somewhat. Advances in technology now gives the military unprecedented capabilities to monitor civilian activities in real time, meaning they're on top of things. Right now, they're even when I'm recording this, they know what's being put out there before it gets uploaded. And if you don't see this, then you don't see it. You know what I mean? In the event of civil unrest, these tools allow for rapid and swift responses. Just like some aerial surveillance, drones can track crowds' movements, identify congested points, and help plan safe, controlled routes for both civilians and security forces. Cellular, the cell phone thingies, monitoring situations. Similar devices can intercept and analyze mobile phone signals, enabling authorities to map communications and movements across the city. So you carrying this thing around with you, they know where people are going. They know, things are planned. Nowadays, on top of that, we have facial recognition. The software is uncanny how fast it is nowadays. They can identify individuals in real time, cross-referencing them against certain databases. Some may have been flagged, persons of interest list, so to speak. I know a lot of prepper channels, a lot of preppers during the 2020 issues and on were on certain lists from our last administration. Those would pop up really fast, in certain situations. Digital mapping of social activities. Everybody has this on your phone. You can turn it off. It's still there. A lot of cars have this information. A lot of times, like now, social media posts, geolocation data, and other digital footprints can be, reveal patterns and trends of what they think you may be going to do, or what you can do, or where you might be at a certain time and where you may run to in certain situations. So if you have, sometimes, say you have a location and it's not your property, or you don't own the area, but it's a certain location that, a bug out location, so to speak. Or say you have caches hidden in the dirt somewhere, and you taken your cell phone so that you can look at the GPS location and memorize that location so that you can go back to the area. Same thing with your bug out location. A way for you to tell your family members where you might be at that point. You think it's very secretive in all this. It's not. They've already tracked that data. They know that data. So if you're red flagged into this situation, so to speak, and they want to try to find you, they will find you because you gave them all the data and everything you'll ever need, because you carry this stuff around. How can you not let this happen? Don't take these things with you when you're finding these locations. Some vehicles have this information within them. Some services that you have within your vehicle track your location. You know, Google on your cell phone tracks where you go, your activity for the month. It'll send you went to this place 14 times this month, and you chose this route 11 of the 14 times. It's amazing how stuff, and it'll tell you how efficient this is, and you think it's so wonderful. It is kind of, but it isn't, if you know what I mean. Now, as preppers or survivalists or whatever you want to call us, or just, people who plan ahead, what should we take from all this? All I can say is this is not trying to scare the crap out of you or anything. This has nothing to do about fear. It's just making sure you have a clear knowledge of things that are happening. The military has plans. Why can't you? Why do you have to rely on something like this? Many preppers find it helpful to look at relocation as a set of possibilities rather than a single bug out plan. I've said this before, before any of this stuff ever came about, my kids growing up, we had areas that we could go to. My oldest ones all knew different scenarios, different code words that would be used. They knew where to go from there. And we treated it kind of like a game, but it was kind of serious. We would actually take planned trips or whatever to go to these areas. And I'm not saying that I owned these areas or they were public or they were private or whatever. But in certain situations, there is no property lines. There is no whatever you want to call it. There's survival, plain and simple. Learning to have a plan in action, practicing these things, just not, watching a YouTuber that has millions of people who follow this YouTuber and he has all the fancy little gadgets that he has never even used ever before. He gets paid to show you these things and use my discount code. I have the same thing, mine or practical things like canning things and knives and seeds. I don't have, big corporations that sell you solar this and solar that and all that stuff. that's beside the point. We won't get into that. That's a slippery slope right there. One thing to think about, and I just talked about a little bit there with the cell phones and bringing this stuff around, and looking for your areas to hide and stuff, and you're bringing a beacon, so to speak, where you're going around. Keep a low profile. Avoid high risk areas. Stay out of the spotlight, so to speak. Don't post your plans. Don't advertise it on social media. I get a kick out of this. I gotta show everybody, I gotta show everybody I'm a prepper. I got to show them all my food and all my supplies. And look at my room. I have my room all set up, and all my stuff is sitting in there purdy and everything. I have all the little gadgets hanging from the ceiling and whatnot. You're advertising, so to speak. I don't have a special room or anything. I have my canning stuff. It's food, you can call it preps, you can call it whatever. You can call it a backup plan, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not, well, I kind of am making fun of them, but I'm not saying anything bad. There's people that got to boast how much goodies they have and the extra money they spend on, I have big old cans of freeze-dried stuff. I've got cases of it stacked to the ceiling and all this stuff. But they've got all this dehydrated and freeze-dried stuff, but they don't store any water. It looks good in a picture and a post or a video, but consider ditching the tracking device that everybody carries around. Use signal blockers, or I sometimes I disc the Faraday cages, the little bags and stuff, but those things are actually kind of handy in certain situations. If I was to go out and I was going to explore and I wanted to keep something with me, just in case, I fall down a hill and break my leg or something, I can take it out of the bag and help, yeah. Now this next one, try to get a group of people that you can trust. This is very hard. Very, very hard. And my phone's going off over there. Cat stepped on something. That being said, I'm not going to try to tell you to do one or the other. It's good to have a group of people that you can trust and practice communications with said individuals. Practice medical prep, security strategies, skill sets, that kind of thing. Kind of get comfortable being what they call gray man, low key, don't fall into a pattern, so to speak. Randomize your outages, your activities, things like that. You know, I know people that the third Monday of the month, they go to the range. They practice this and that. You know, we go fishing on last Friday of the month or something like, you know, they're so scheduled and everything. This is it to benefit you or is it to benefit them? Is where I'm going with it. Again, this is not to scare the crap out of you. Stay informed, not to get paranoid on every little thing that happens in the government and stuff. First of all, anything that happens in the government, you can't do a dang thing about it. Plain and simple. So why are you getting so scared, and why are you panicking over something that you have no control over? Keep your wits about you, so to speak. The last thing I'm going to say here, the government has its own plan for you. Why don't you have your own? With that, God bless. Have a wonderful day.